It all begins in a world plagued by monsters that dwell within dark regions known as dungeons. These ominous labyrinths continuously release violent and terrifying creatures that threaten humanity, spreading immeasurable fear across the land. The beasts assault cities relentlessly, destroying everything in their path and attacking the knights tasked with defending the people. Despite the soldiers' courageous resistance, the monsters prove overwhelmingly powerful. As despair spreads, the people cling to hope, praying for the emergence of a hero capable of standing against this looming catastrophe. The scene shifts to the outskirts of the Belgian Empire, where a city has already fallen under attack. A monstrous wolf snarls menacingly, baring its sharp fangs as it prepares to strike. The creature traps a terrified mother and her young son, leaving them with no route of escape. As the beast opens its massive jaws, ready to devour them in a single bite, the woman can do nothing but clutch her child tightly, bracing herself for the inevitable. Suddenly, a radiant sword is unsheathed by an unseen figure. In the next instant, the mysterious warrior shatters the wall with one decisive strike, saving the family just in time. Kneeling before them, the savior calmly asks if they are unharmed, and the woman quickly confirms that they are safe. Moments later, a group of knights arrives behind him, and he instructs the civilians to retreat, assuring them that his unit will handle the rest. The young man introduces himself as Ash, captain of the Empire's 13th Knight Unit. As a member of the infamous 13th Unit, the protagonist smiles with confidence as he prepares for the battle ahead. Ash commands his squad to eliminate the enemies, and the knights charge forward together. Not long after, another monster lunges toward the captain in an attempt at a surprise attack. Ash meets the threat with a focused expression as his eye begins to glow. Tightening his grip on his sword, he charges forward and delivers a precise strike, cutting down the wolf. However, before the creature can fully collapse, a flying monster emerges overhead. Using the fallen wolf as a foothold, Ash launches himself upward as a griffin swoops down to attack. The beast slams its claws into the ground, but the captain narrowly evades the strike. Leaping backward, Ash creates distance and searches for an opening. That's when he notices a farmer's rake leaning against a nearby wall. Grabbing the tool, Ash infuses it with his energy, boldly asking the monster what it thinks of his choice of weapon. With all his strength, he hurls the rake toward the flying creature. The attack lands true, and the griffin lets out a piercing scream as it crashes to the ground. Ash's hand begins to glow as he prepares to unleash another ability, but the situation quickly worsens. Several monsters surround his comrades, prompting them to complain that the enemies seem endless. After cutting down another wolf, Ash checks on Mary and Will, asking if they are all right. Raising his sword high, the captain shouts that they will never be defeated and vows to protect the village at all costs. Inspired by his words, Will smiles with renewed determination, while Mary is equally fired up, pushing herself to fight with everything she has. Together, the entire 13th unit advances once more to confront the remaining horde. The battle rages deep into the night, until at last, every monster is defeated. Exhausted, Ash wonders aloud whether they have truly eliminated all the enemies. Suddenly, an unsettling noise rises from one of the fallen bodies, startling everyone present. From the shadows, a new presence emerges, shocking the knights. Even Ash is left momentarily speechless as a massive serpent reveals itself beneath the glow of the full moon. Smirking confidently, the captain remarks that it seems one of the bigger threats has finally decided to show itself. The serpent opens its jaws and unleashes a powerful stream of fire toward the group. Ash immediately steps forward, placing himself between the attack and his comrades. Shielding himself with his arm, he endures the intense heat of the flames. With a resolute expression, the protagonist formulates his next move before charging straight through the inferno. Leaping toward the serpent's head, Ash is met with a swift counter as the creature attempts to swallow him whole. He is caught, but manages to wedge his sword between its jaws, preventing them from closing. Seeing her captain in peril, the archer rushes forward, calling out his name. She prepares a special arrow glowing with vivid blue energy. Uruka releases the shot, sending it streaking toward the serpent's eye. The arrow strikes its weak point, and the monster recoils in agony, throwing its head back and exposing an opening. Ash seizes the moment, breaking free and thanking Uruka for her timely assistance. Regaining his stance, the captain fixes his gaze on the wounded serpent and prepares to finish the fight. Charging forward, Ash swings his glowing blade with a fierce battle cry, unleashing all his power in one final strike. A trail of golden light cuts through the air as the attack connects, cleaving the massive serpent cleanly in two. The creature collapses, defeated at last. The villagers who witnessed the battle stand frozen in disbelief before erupting into cheers, celebrating their victory. The narrator explains that the monster assault on the Empire was successfully stopped thanks to the efforts of the 13th Night Unit. Much of the credit belongs to Captain Ash, whose overwhelming performance saw him personally defeat over 200 monsters, making him indispensable to the victory. After the battle, Ash's companions swarm him in celebration, praising his incredible feat. Due to his unmatched strength, the young captain earns the nickname H the Vanquisher. The scene then transitions to a grand castle under a clear, peaceful sky. Inside, the king formally acknowledges Ash's accomplishments in subjugating the monsters. As a reward, the emperor bestows upon him the title of quasi-noble of the kingdom. Ash humbly accepts the honor with a respectful bow. In the grand ballroom, the nobles greet him with thunderous applause. His friends remark that such a promotion is both extraordinary and unprecedented for a knight, joking that Ash has officially entered high society. Wearing an awkward smile, the protagonist then reveals that he is also becoming engaged. The announcement stuns everyone, leaving his companions frozen in shock. Yuruka panics and shouts for Ash to reject the engagement, but he calmly replies that some things are simply impossible to refuse. The engagement partner is revealed to be Miss Leifi, the second daughter of the esteemed noble house Legion. The protagonist explains that, as a newly appointed noble, there is no way he can refuse the engagement arrangement. Although countless events are unfolding at once and leaving him confused, he forces himself to remain composed. Ash lowers his gaze to the medal he received and reflects that, in the end, everything seems to be working in his favor. At the time, it truly felt like his life was finally stabilizing. He believed that from now on, he would be able to enjoy a peaceful and happy future. While sharing a toast with his companions, the young captain sincerely thought things would continue this way. However, 3 years later, Ash is left stunned by the words spoken by his fiancée. She coldly states that she will repeat herself so that he fully understands the situation. Leifi rises from her seat and points directly at him, declaring that their engagement is officially over. Completely unable to process her sudden announcement, the protagonist stands frozen in shock. As if that weren't enough, Ash is soon summoned before a man who appears to be a high-ranking superior, wearing a malicious smile. The man points at him and declares his expulsion from the Knights. The scene then returns to the confrontation with Leifi, where Ash desperately asks what he did to make her hate him. He explains that he adjusted his clothing, habits, and preferences entirely to suit her tastes. He even quit drinking and smoking solely to satisfy her demands. On top of that, he spared no effort in gifting her expensive and beautiful presents. Leifi responds coldly, saying she is exhausted from dealing with a barbaric commoner like him. She reveals that she has grown close to a refined gentleman from an earl's family who regularly showers her with gifts. Shocked by her shallow reasoning, Ash wonders if this alone is truly the reason for their breakup. He insists that he cannot accept this outcome and confesses that he genuinely loves her, but she merely scoffs at his words. Ash denies her implication and explains that it was her father who originally proposed the marriage, enraged by his statement. Leifi accuses him of insulting her father as well, snapping her fan shut. She declares that she has no intention of speaking any further with a commoner, pointing toward the former captain. She orders her guards to throw him out immediately. The guards seize Ash by the arms and begin dragging him away as he shouts for them to stop and begs Leifi to listen. She ignores him completely, stating before he is removed that she never wants to see his face again. The scene transitions to the city streets on what appears to be a calm and sunny day. Walking alone, Ash reflects on how strange everything feels. For the Legion family to publicly dissolve an engagement like this makes no sense. Suddenly, someone calls out his name, and he turns to see two knights standing behind him. They order him to report to the barracks under command of their superior. Once there, his officer, Mike Libro, informs him that he has been expelled from the Order of Knights. Ash is struck speechless by the unexpected verdict and asks for an explanation. Mike bluntly replies that Ash is nothing more than an obstacle. He claims that the young man stands in the way of both his promotion and his relationship with Leifi. At that moment, Ash realizes the truth. Mike is his former fiancée's new partner. This man, Michael Labrog, is Ash's superior officer and an imperial knight, a privileged noble who attained his rank purely through family connections. Ash understands that Mike resents his promotion, knowing that Ash would eventually outrank him. With a mocking grin, Mike asks what's wrong with the look in Ash's eyes before reaching out and touching his medal. He sneers that he never approved of commoners becoming nobles. Continuing his provocation, Mike claims that the monster subjugation was nothing special. Ash recalls the countless hardships he endured alongside his unit. Finally reaching his limit, he grabs Mike by the collar in fury and shouts at him for his despicable behavior. Mike calmly threatens him, asking whether it's wise to oppose someone from an earl's family. He adds that if Ash refuses to comply, his comrades will also be expelled from the unit. Left with no choice, Ash releases his grip, overwhelmed by helplessness. Mike smugly asks if he now understands the difference in status between them. He snatches Ash's medal, stating that he will teach him what truly matters for a knight. Tossing the decoration to the ground, he crushes it beneath his foot with a cold smile. He claims that grace is what truly matters, something a brute like Ash could never possess. He then orders him to pack his belongings and leave by the end of the day. As Ash carries his belongings through the corridors, other knights whisper and comment behind his back. He continues forward in silence, head lowered, trying to process everything that has happened. Upon reaching his destination, a knock echoes against a wooden door before he enters. Introducing himself, Ash states that he has come to return his equipment. A man with an unusual mustache greets him mockingly, saying the disgraced knight from the rumors has arrived. Confused, Ash asks what he means, and the man explains that everyone already knows. According to the rumors, Ash was dismissed for forcing his fiancée into inappropriate behavior. He claims that Ash made Leafy play baby, prompting her to seek help from Mike, who then became furious and expelled him. Stunned, Ash storms outside and shouts for him not to joke about such things. Overcome with rage, he punches a brick wall and screams Mike's name. He is furious that such a vile rumor was spread about him. Staring at the building, he laments how everything he worked for over so many years was lost in an instant. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, addressing him as Senior. Ash turns in surprise to see Yuruka running toward him, asking if it's true that he's leaving the Knights. She is Aura Urdane, the only noble-born member of the 13th unit. Ash corrects her, explaining that he was fired, leaving her visibly shocked. She asks why, saying she still wanted to learn under his guidance. With a gentle smile, Ash simply speaks her name. The narrator explains that she once cried constantly when she first joined the unit, but she has since grown much stronger. Then, with an unusual expression, the girl steps closer and quietly says that if he wanted to play baby, he could have just asked her. The young man shouts that the rumor is completely false, and Ruka responds that if that's the case, then there's no reason for him to leave. With a sorrowful expression, she asks what will happen to the Janus unit if he goes. The protagonist falls silent for a moment, reflecting on her words. The story then flashes back 3 years to the very village they once saved. Back then, Murray complained that despite their desperate struggle, only the captain received recognition. Will explained that the Empire failed to truly understand the danger posed by dungeons and viewed everything as nothing more than monster subjugation. Even so, the protagonist smiled faintly, thinking about something that truly mattered. He stated that protecting the village and earning the gratitude of its people was the real truth. He continued by saying that they could take pride in that fact even if the nobles failed to understand it. He then proposed giving their unit a unique name, and Ruka immediately thought it was a great idea. The captain asked Will if he had any suggestions, and after a brief moment of thought, Will proposed the name Janus. An ancient god with one face facing forward and another facing backward, everyone agreed that the name fit perfectly, as they fought against both humans and monsters. With that, the decision was made. Wearing a confident smile, Ash declared that from that day onward, they would be known as the Janus unit. Returning to the present, the protagonist tells Ruka that even if he leaves, he will always remain a part of the Janus unit. He emphasizes that no matter where he goes, his heart will forever stay with the team. Yuruka looks at him with concern and asks what he plans to do next. Ash replies that he's grown tired of the Imperial nobles and will likely head to a foreign country instead. Grabbing onto him, his friend shouts that she's coming with him, but he gently refuses, patting her on the head. He asks her to stay behind and protect the unit. The girl blushes slightly at the gesture but understands the responsibility he's entrusting to her. She asks him to write once he's settled, and he nods in agreement. Waving goodbye, Ash departs as his friend stares after him, demanding a promise. Yuruka remains behind, watching her former captain leave with a serious expression. Suddenly, however, a mischievous smile spreads across her face, and her eyes glint with an unusual light. Ash formally returns his quasi-noble title and relinquishes his family name. With that, he reflects that from this moment on, he will return to being simply Ash, just as he was before. At the train station, the young man stretches, feeling as though a heavy burden has finally been lifted from his shoulders. He picks up a pamphlet detailing his destination and reads through it briefly, smiling with his luggage in hand. The former knight prepares for the next chapter of his life. The train begins to move, revealing a beautiful view of the kingdom's landscape. The steam locomotive travels steadily along the tracks, carrying Ash toward a new future. Inside a luxurious carriage, the young man sits comfortably, enjoying the journey. Suddenly, an elderly man wearing a top hat appears at the door of his compartment. The stranger walks toward him with firm, deliberate steps and politely asks for a moment of his attention. Not recognizing him, Ash asks who the man is. The gentleman produces the pamphlet Ash had been reading and asks if he might have dropped it. Thanking him, the protagonist accepts it, and the man asks whether this is his first time visiting the kingdom. Ash asks how he knew, and the old man explains that he was observing the scenery with clear curiosity. Ash comments that in his empire, only the wealthiest individuals can afford to travel by train. The man laughs and explains that in the Rosebell Kingdom, trains are simply common transportation. Surprising Ash, he goes on to explain that the kingdom became a pioneer in magical tool development due to its constant exposure to dungeon threats. Because of this, sorcerers relied on magic to fight monsters, creating fire and water through their abilities. Magic was also used to heal injuries in miraculous ways. As a result of this research, tools crafted from monster materials were developed. These innovations dramatically changed daily life and allowed the kingdom to prosper. That is why the Rosebell Kingdom is now known across the world as a magical superpower. Ash realizes that the Empire lags behind because it continues to underestimate the danger of dungeons. Suddenly, An announcement signals their arrival at the city, and the old man reacts with excitement. The train comes to a stop, and passengers are reminded not to leave anything behind. Ash and his new acquaintance disembark together, each carrying their luggage. Outside the station, Ash calls out to the gentleman to thank him for the companionship and say goodbye. An elegant carriage, driven by a well-dressed coachman, waits nearby. Ash shakes the man's hand and thanks him for everything he shared during the trip. The gentleman welcomes him to the kingdom and wishes him a pleasant stay. With an eager smile, Ash replies that he looks forward to it. Walking through the streets, Ash finally arrives at Rosebell's famous second dungeon city. He is amazed by the armor and magical items displayed in shop windows. The streets are lively, filled with people and bustling market activity. As he continues through the market, observing everything around him, a woman suddenly rushes past with panic written across her face. Surprised, Ash turns to see what's happening, but she collides with him as she continues to flee down the street. Moments later, several suspicious men appear, chasing after her and ordering her to stop. With no escape, the woman is cornered in a dead-end alley. The men approach with malicious smiles, telling her there's nowhere left to run. Terrified, she backs away, shaking her head helplessly. Just as one of them reaches out to grab her, a hand suddenly grips his shoulder from behind. Ash stands there with a serious expression and calmly says that he's had enough to drink for today. The thug demands to know who he is, and Ash responds that the girl is clearly distressed by his persistence. Angered, the man shouts at him to shut up and swings a punch toward his face. Ash easily dodges the attack, a bluish aura flaring around him, before countering with a powerful punch straight to the attacker's stomach, leaving the man unable to react. The man spits blood and lets out a scream of pain as the force of the strike sends him flying backward. He crashes to the ground, defeated, while his companions stare in shock. Enraged, the remaining two hurl curses and rush forward together, attempting to overwhelm the protagonist. Ash calmly confronts both attackers at once, taking them down with swift and precise movements. He notices that their actions suggest they are accustomed to fighting, which comes as no surprise. To end the clash, the former captain delivers a powerful kick to the last assailant, his eyes glowing as the blow sends the man hurtling through the air. Witnessing this, the final thug is utterly terrified by Ash's strength. Without allowing him time to react, Ash strikes him cleanly in the face with a decisive punch. In moments, all the attackers are sprawled on the ground, completely defeated by the former knight. After the fight, Ash straightens his clothing, appearing perfectly composed. Suddenly, the first man he struck struggles back to his feet, his eyes burning with fury. Drawing his sword, the bully declares that he will not forgive what Ash has done. Slightly surprised, Ash wonders why the man would dare draw a weapon within the city. The thug charges forward, shouting as he swings with all his strength. Before the blade can reach him, a commanding voice shouts for the fight to stop. An armored knight steps into the alley, announcing that he can no longer ignore the disturbance. He states that an amateur stands no chance against a true knight. To everyone's surprise, he reveals that he knows the young man, calling him Ash, one of the Empire's finest. Recognizing the newcomer, Ash smiles and greets his old friend by name, Bale. Introducing himself as Bale Baron, the knight places the bullies under arrest for causing trouble. A brief flashback shows the two men in the past, engaged in a fierce exchange match. Their swords clash violently as they battle in an intense duel, with neither side holding a clear advantage. Their win-loss record stood evenly split, 50-50. Returning to the present, the two shake hands, and the narrator remarks that they are worthy rivals. To celebrate their reunion, the friends share mugs of beer in a tavern. Bale explains that he rushed over due to reports of a disturbance. Never expecting to encounter an old friend, while drinking, he asks what brought Ash to the kingdom, prompting an awkward expression from the former knight. Ash then recounts everything that happened to him back in the Empire. After finishing his explanation, he says that is why he left the knights and came here. Just thinking about it all fills him with anger and frustration. Snapping his fingers, Bale suggests that Ash start fresh in the Rosebell Kingdom. Confused, Ash asks what he means. Bale points at him and invites him to become a dungeon hunter. Even more puzzled, Ash repeats the term, unfamiliar with the concept. Bale explains that dungeon hunters venture into dangerous dungeons to hunt monsters and collect the magic stones from their bodies, which are then sold at the association. He adds that he would be glad if someone as capable as Ash joined them. Suddenly, a soldier bursts into the tavern, shouting that an emergency has occurred. He reports a monster outbreak in the dungeon, shocking everyone present. The soldier explains that it's a stampede and the situation is extremely serious. Although requests for help have been sent out, they don't know how many fighters will arrive in time. Bale turns to Ash with a grave expression and calls his name, extending his hand. He asks whether Ash will fight alongside them to protect the city. A stampede is described as an event where monsters grow violent and surge out of the dungeon, invading cities and destroying everything in their path. The creatures attack relentlessly, placing civilians in constant danger. Understanding the urgency, Ash realizes they must eliminate the monsters before anyone is harmed. Without hesitation, the former knight agrees to help and pledges to fight alongside his friend. Shaking Bale's hand, he promises to do his best not to hinder him in battle. The two head to the Hunters Association to join the others. Inside, chaos reigns as hunters argue and prepare for the fight. When the soldier announces Bale's arrival, others complain about the delay. One hunter argues with a young woman, asking whether there has been any word from the Night Order. Observing the disorder, Ash comments on the confusion, and Bale replies that it reflects how serious the situation is. Approaching the receptionist, Bale requests a briefing on the mission. She reports an abnormal outbreak of 300 blue monkeys on the 10th underground floor. Hearing this, Bale concludes with concern that a stampede is inevitable. The receptionist then asks about the young man standing beside him, and Bale introduces Ash as his friend. She appears suspicious, noting that Ash doesn't look like either a knight or a hunter. Two other hunters step forward and ask whether the newcomer has any combat experience. Bale reassures them that Ash's abilities are exceptional and that there's no need to worry. With the matter settled, Bale urges everyone to move quickly toward the dungeon. The group arrives at the entrance of the city's second dungeon, a place shrouded in darkness and danger. Bale offers to lend Ash a weapon and armor, which he accepts. Ash selects a light breastplate and mentions that he prefers a long sword, but Bale suggests an alternative. Bale reveals that the weapon is a magic sword, a concept Ash has never encountered. He explains that it is a technology unique to the kingdom, combining magic with weaponry to activate it. He hands Ash a magic stone and instructs him to place it into a slot in the sword's guard. Curious, Ash inserts the stone, which fits perfectly. A bluish glow spreads along the blade as a shimmering ore-like light envelopes the weapon, leaving Ash astonished. Bale explains that the sword greatly enhances its cutting power, making it far more effective. Amazed, Ash comments that a weapon like this would completely change the nature of combat. With their preparations complete, the group gathers to enter the dungeon and confront the monsters. The narrator explains that the dungeon consists of multiple floors, each inhabited by different types of creatures. As the group ventures deeper into the dungeon, the monsters grow increasingly fierce and dangerous. Bale explains that a barricade has been constructed on the stairs leading to the third floor to intercept the incoming creatures. When they arrive, the protagonist is surprised to see that the interior resembles an artificial structure rather than a natural cave. Bale comments that dungeons are filled with mysteries and urges everyone to stay focused on the mission. He then points toward another barricade positioned on the stairs leading to the fourth floor, where they plan to form a defensive line. Suddenly, the structure is struck by an overwhelming force. Bale shouts that the monsters have already arrived, and one of the hunters panics at the situation. Calling out to his friend, Bale charges forward, and the two rush into battle side by side. In an instant, the barricade is obliterated by a powerful energy blast. Moments later, a swarm of giant blue monkeys pours through the opening. Prepared to attack, Bale warns that their weak point is the head, and Ash acknowledges this as he readies himself for combat. Almost immediately, one of the creatures lunges toward him with a ferocious roar. Ash gives a faint smile, noting that the monsters aren't particularly fast. With a swift and precise motion, he slices the creature cleanly in half, using his magic sword. The surrounding hunters are stunned to see a monster defeated with a single strike. Ash briefly wonders about the nature of the weapon, as it cuts through flesh as effortlessly as butter. While continuing to fight, Bale laughs and asks whether Ash likes the power of the magic sword. Ash realizes that with such a weapon, he may not even need to target the monster's weak points. To test this idea, he swings horizontally at another blue monkey. The attack works flawlessly, sending the creature crashing into the wall. Even after falling, the monster twitches briefly before going still. Suddenly, another monkey launches a surprise attack from the ground. Attempting to grab him, Ash reacts instantly, slashing it down with his gleaming blade. Bale warns that these creatures are unusually resilient, which irritates Ash. Understanding that this is simply the reality of a hunter's work, Ash kicks one of the monsters aside. But the horde seems endless as yet another charges at him, cutting down another enemy. He complains that the situation is tougher than expected. Nearby, Bale confronts a monkey gathering energy and remarks that their fur is extremely valuable. Preparing his strike, he explains that the fur is popular among nobles for winter clothing. The other hunters watch in awe, impressed by the strength of the blue monkeys and the ease with which Ash and Bale handle them. Curious, they begin asking who Captain Bale's companion is. One knight reveals that the young man is Ash the Vanquisher, a name that instantly shocks the group. He explains that Ash once halted a monster stampede in the Empire, personally defeating over 200 monsters. The hunters are stunned by the number, calling him an elite comparable to a hero. The knight adds that if Ash is on the same level as Bale, then he must possess the skill of the kingdom's 10 swords. Confused, Ash asks what this title means. As he continues fighting, a red aura briefly flares around his eye. Bale removes his helmet and answers seriously, confirming it, with a slightly ominous smile. He explains that becoming one of the 10 swords is the greatest aspiration of all knights. During the battle, Ash shouts back, asking if Bale hasn't grown stronger, openly praising him. Bale replies that Ash himself has become stronger than he was a year ago, fighting shoulder to shoulder. Their glowing blades carve through the monsters in a dazzling exchange. Ash, pleased by the compliment, asks if Bale truly believes that. Bale responds that it only makes him want Ash to become a hunter even more. Eventually, the battle comes to an end. The ground is littered with monster corpses, and the remaining hunters stare in disbelief as they realize that Ash and Bale alone defeated all 300 blue monkeys. Realizing they barely contributed, the others watch as the two warriors celebrate their victory together. Back at the association, the receptionist tallies the value of the collected magic stones. She announces that the total comes to 600,000 rows. Shocking everyone present, Bale asks whether elite hunters regularly earn such sums, and the receptionist confirms it with a playful smile and wink. Bale once again invites Ash to join them, asking if he truly doesn't want to become a dungeon hunter. Ash pauses, deep in thought. The receptionist clasps her hands excitedly, urging him to accept. With an awkward smile, the former knight agrees. Shaking hands, he officially confirms his decision to become a hunter. Cheers erupt as the association staff enthusiastically applaud their newest member. To mark the occasion, Bale suggests holding a welcome party, and everyone agrees. The scene shifts to the city's clock tower at night, illuminated beneath a full moon. Several days later, at the Imperial Knights Barracks, a letter arrives addressed to someone. A female soldier calls out to Ruka, informing her that a postcard has arrived in her name, thanking her. Ruka takes the letter, curiosity evident on her face as she wonders who sent it. Suddenly, a low, unsettling laugh echoes through the room, standing with her back turned. The girl wears a frightening expression and a malicious smile as she declares that she will go see him immediately. The scene returns to the Imperial Knights headquarters on a sunny day. Yuruka reads the postcard with relief, smiling as she notes that Ash seems full of energy. However, her expression shifts when she reads the sender's address. Her former teammates greet her, but she reacts with surprise. Mari and will enter the room, and Yuruka is shocked to see them after so long. She asks whether their training has ended, and Mireille confirms it without much enthusiasm. The red-haired girl collapses onto the sofa, saying it just isn't the same without Ash around. At that, the blonde reveals she heard that the former captain became a hunter in the Rosebell Kingdom. She explains that a letter from him arrived at her home, stating that he now hunts magical monsters. Mari pours herself a glass of water and wonders aloud whether the job pays well. Will takes a glass as well and comments that judging from the letter, their friend doesn't appear to be struggling financially. The knight comments that it sounds like a far better working environment than their previous one. He adds that becoming a hunter might suit Ash much better, and the girl agrees with his opinion. Suddenly, Ruka announces with a peculiar smile that she is leaving the knights for good. Mari is shocked and asks whether she plans to follow the former captain, which the blonde calmly confirms. Soon after, Will also reveals that he is leaving to take over his family's merchant business. The red-haired girl complains that the place will become unbearably dull, but then an idea seems to strike her, jumping to her feet with excitement. She declares that she will also become a hunter because it sounds fun. At that moment, a dark and jealous aura radiates from Yuruka, who clearly dislikes the announcement. Mary asks which city in the kingdom the protagonist is currently in, while the blonde maintains her cold stare. With a sinister smile, Yuruka reveals that he is in the first dungeon city. The red-haired girl excitedly suggests that they go together, but Yuruka immediately rejects the idea. She explains that she must first speak with her family before she can leave. With that, the three gather together and officially declare that the 13th unit has been disbanded. The scene shifts to the Hunters Association, a building with a rough and rustic appearance. Inside, the receptionist greets Ash with a cheerful good morning, and he recognizes her from their previous encounter. She asks if he has come to complete his registration, and he confirms it, growing excited. The girl praises his incredible performance from before and says she is glad to see him again. She introduces herself as May, and the protagonist replies awkwardly that it's a pleasure to meet her. May hands him several forms and instructs him to fill them out at the counter. After some time, the former knight finishes the paperwork and submits it with a smile. Taking the documents, May winks and asks him to wait a moment while she processes the registration. A few minutes later, she returns and presents him with his new hunter's license inside a small box. She explains that the license must be shown whenever entering or leaving a dungeon. When Ash asks why, she clarifies that if a hunter fails to return, the association sends out a search party, which reassures him. May then explains that all monster materials must be handed over to the association, and that taking furs to craft winter clothing is strictly prohibited. Another rule forbids hunters from renouncing their citizenship to prevent sensitive information from leaking. Ash asks about traveling, and the receptionist advises that it is safer to avoid it for now. With the explanation complete, she formally welcomes him to the Hunters Association. Thanking her, Ash smiles confidently and says he will do his best in his new role. The scene changes to the entrance of the city's second dungeon on a bright, sunny day. Ash walks alone down the street, heading toward his first job as a hunter. A guard stationed at the entrance asks whether he intends to enter the dungeon. Ash confirms and presents his new license for inspection. After verifying it, the guard allows him to pass, and Ash thanks him as he moves forward. Suddenly, another hunter deliberately bumps into him from behind, forcing him to turn around. The impact causes Ash's license to fall onto the stone floor at the entrance. The man picks it up and returns it with a mocking apology. His companions gather around and point out the beginner's mark on Ash's license. The bully warns him that if he doesn't want to get taken out, he should stick to the lower floors. Laughing loudly, the group walks away. Ash wonders what their problem is, but chooses to ignore them. Putting on his gloves, he feels excited to begin his new life as a hunter. With his sword strapped to his back, he confidently heads toward the dungeon entrance. Upon reaching the first floor, Ash thinks he can explore the area calmly this time. Suddenly, he hears a noise and senses a monster watching him. However, he soon notices two young boys celebrating after obtaining a magic stone from a slime. Curious, the former knight approaches them and asks what such young hunters are doing there. One of the boys replies that they are slime fishing, which leaves Ash confused. The boy then explains that by throwing vegetables into a lake, slimes come out to eat. Right on cue, a slime emerges from the water to consume the carrot they used as bait. They successfully lure the creature onto land, and the other boy pierces its core with his sword, defeating it. A small magic stone appears, helping Ash understand the concept of fishing. The boys explain that slimes are docile creatures, making them ideal for earning some extra money. Ash comments that the monsters here don't seem very dangerous, and the boys agree. One of them suggests that if he's confident, he should try going down to the 10th floor. Ash agrees, but then notices the boy holding out his hand. Confused by the gesture, Ash listens as the boy asks for an information fee. Shocked, the former knight hands over the money. The boy thanks him for the business while counting the coins, and Ash waves awkwardly. At that moment, he realizes that he was the one who got fished this time. Regaining his composure, the young hunter decides it's time to head to the next floor. Excited, he looks forward to discovering what kinds of monsters await him deeper within the dungeon. Meanwhile, the hunter who bullied him earlier appears furious for reasons unknown. With anger etched across his face, he struggles to understand what is happening with the creatures. His group is suddenly surrounded by monsters with glowing red eyes lurking in the darkness. The scene shifts to the 4th floor, revealing a vast, sunlit green field. Ash is stunned by the sight and realizes that the environment changes with each floor. Looking up, he is amazed to see a sky above him, despite being deep underground on the 4th basement level. Suddenly, the former knight notices movement within the tall grass nearby. A small horned rabbit hops into view, and Ash instinctively finds the creature cute. In the next instant, however, the rabbit spins around and kicks his sword with shocking speed and strength. Completely caught off guard by the tiny monster's sudden attack, the young hunter is momentarily stunned. He quickly reminds himself that no matter how adorable it looks, it is still a monster, and he swings his glowing magic sword. With the horned rabbit defeated, Ash celebrates his first official monster subjugation inside the dungeon. He pulls out a guidebook to check the creature's name and learns that it is indeed called a horned rabbit, exactly matching its appearance. He then realizes that the materials to collect are the horn and the monster's magic stone. Carefully gathering both items, he places them into a small leather pouch. Holding the pouch, Ash reflects on how mysterious and convenient the item is. However, after checking the purchase value of the materials, he realizes they are extremely cheap, concluding that hunting these creatures isn't worthwhile. He decides it would be better to head deeper into the dungeon. At that moment, a large group of horned rabbits suddenly appears before him, all staring with threatening expressions. Terrified, the protagonist immediately turns and runs for his life, desperately, fleeing from the swarm. The narrator explains that after several events, Ash has now reached the 9th floor of the dungeon. His exploration continues smoothly, and upon reaching the 10th floor, he encounters the blue monkeys once again. Eventually, he arrives at the 13th floor. Taking a deep breath, the former knight realizes just how far he has progressed. Surveying his surroundings, he wonders whether the environment has shifted once more, from fields to forests, and now perhaps to a cave. Suddenly, a chilling scream echoes through the corridor, causing Ash to turn in surprise. Recognizing that the sound is coming from deeper within the dungeon, he rushes toward it. There, he finds the same group of hunters he encountered at the entrance. Now surrounded by skeleton monsters, he immediately recognizes them as the hunters who mocked him earlier. A massive skeleton wearing a red cape raises its weapon, preparing to strike the group's leader. Ash shouts a warning and charges forward with his glowing sword, just in time. He blocks the deadly blow, saving the hunter from certain death. He quickly asks if the man is all right, and the hunter replies that he's shaken but unharmed. Facing the monster, Ash realizes it's the first time he's encountered a skeleton like this one. He launches an attack, striking the creature's body with a powerful slash. The blow lands, shattering the skeleton's frame and sending it crashing to the ground. However, even while broken apart, the creature's eyes continue to glow, showing that it is still active. Ash wonders whether its weak point is the head and prepares another strike. He swings his shining blade down onto the skeleton's skull with tremendous force, letting out a breath. He believes the battle has finally ended. Suddenly, a purple magic stone inside the skeleton's chest begins to glow. To his shock, the creature starts repairing itself before his eyes. Momentarily stunned, Ash wonders if the monster is immortal, but then recalls that skeletons are already lifeless beings. The other hunters shout that the true weak point is the magic stone embedded in the chest. Looking closely, Ash spots the glowing core and immediately understands what he must destroy. The skeleton rises once more and charges at him with its sword. Ash sidesteps the attack and counters with a precise slash from his bluish blade. He then gathers his strength and rushes forward, aiming directly for the monster's chest. With a sharp punch, he smashes through the rib cage and grabs the magic stone with his bare hand. His eyes glow as he yanks it free, asking the monster what it thinks of that. The magic stone shatters in his grasp, and Ash feels satisfied, deprived of its power source. The skeleton collapses completely, defeated at last. Now understanding their weakness, Ash turns to face the remaining skeletons. Confident that the battle will no longer be difficult, he raises his sword with a determined smile. Charging forward, he strikes down another skeleton with a swift, precise blow. Before the next can react, he destroys it just as cleanly. His eyes glowing, Ash activates an ability and wipes out several enemies at once. When the fighting finally ends, he exhales deeply, standing among the defeated monsters. The group of hunters he saved approaches him, expressing their heartfelt gratitude. The leader recognizes him as the rookie from the dungeon entrance and is astonished by his strength. Apologizing for mocking him earlier, the man explains what happened to their group. According to him, the dungeon had been unusually quiet, so they ventured deeper than normal. A flashback shows the group casually walking through the cave corridors. Suddenly, skeletons ambushed them from the shadows without warning. One member threw himself in front of the attack to protect the leader, suffering severe injuries in the process. Although they tried to fight back, they stood no chance against the overwhelming number of monsters. The female member explains that they were helpless as she tends to the injured man. The group leader desperately calls out his friend's name as Ash kneels to examine the wound. He immediately realizes that the injury is critical and that the hunter's life is in serious danger. Suddenly, an enormous shadow stretches across the dark corridor, sending fear through everyone present. Moments later, another horde of skeletons emerges from the darkness, advancing toward the trapped group, ready to attack. The protagonist complains that even more monsters have appeared as the girl tends to their injured companion. With a tense expression, Ash realizes just how overwhelming the number of enemies has become. The other hunters are equally terrified, fully aware that the situation has grown extremely dangerous. Suddenly, the girl shouts for the former knight to be careful. Ash turns at her warning and braces himself for the incoming threat. Moments later, a horde of skeletons charges forward with swords raised. Rushing straight toward him, Ash slashes one of the monsters with his shining blade, destroying its body. To his shock, however, the skeleton immediately begins to regenerate. Frustrated, he realizes once again that he must destroy the magic stones to defeat them permanently. Ash yells for the group to grab the injured hunter and flee while he holds the monster's back. Leaping forward, he delivers a powerful aerial strike to another skeleton, then kicks its body away after driving his sword into its chest. Still, Ash grits his teeth, complaining that it's impossible to aim for the magic stones when so many enemies are packed together. Surrounded on all sides, he realizes just how dire their predicament has become. Unsure of what to do, he desperately searches for a way out. Suddenly, his eyes widen as a memory resurfaces. A flashback shows Ash purchasing a longsword and breastplate at a shop. Confident in his new gear, he declares that his equipment is perfect. The shopkeeper then hands him a free item, explaining that it is a smoke bomb capable of repelling monsters and that it might come in handy. Curious, Ash recalls wondering whether the item truly worked as advertised. Back in the present, Ash frantically rummages through his pockets in search of the smoke bomb. A relieved smile spreads across his face when he finally finds it. With no other options left, he declares that he has no choice and hurls the bomb with all his strength. The object arcs toward the skeleton horde and detonates in a burst of blue light, striking one of the monsters directly in the face. It releases thick white smoke that rapidly spreads throughout the area. The smoke engulfs everything, and the group anxiously waits to see whether the item worked. Ash clasps his hands together, praying desperately that it will save them. Knowing they are finished if it fails, slowly, the smoke begins to dissipate, and the skeletons appear to have stopped moving entirely. Realizing the bomb worked, the group celebrates in relief, praising the item's effectiveness. Ash quickly cuts them off, shouting that there's no time to celebrate and ordering them to run while they still can. Lifting the injured hunter, Ash leads the group as they flee from danger. After some distance, he comments that the monsters likely won't pursue them any further. The injured man groans, lamenting that he may lose his arm. Ash immediately steps in to help, beginning to bandage the wound to slow the bleeding. He then pulls out a potion and explains that he's going to pour it into the hunter's mouth to help him recover. Forcing his mouth open, Ash pours the green liquid inside. The potion takes effect, and the bleeding slows noticeably. Ash tells the others to carry the injured man back to the surface. The scene transitions to the city, where the clock tower glows beneath the light of the setting sun. Emerging from the dungeon, Ash shouts for a doctor as they carry their companion. Medics soon arrive, placing the injured hunter onto a stretcher and rushing him to the hospital. Exhausted, Ash sinks onto a couch, thinking that his role is finished and that the rest is up to the doctors. The group leader apologizes and offers him a reward, but Ash refuses immediately. He says it's only natural to help one another and tells them not to worry about it. An hour later, a doctor exits the room, and the group anxiously asks about their friend's condition. The doctor explains that the potion saved his life, much to the girl's relief, but adds that his arm could not be saved. The leader responds that survival alone is enough. Ash agrees, stating that as long as someone is alive, anything remains possible, and that they will find him a new job. Watching their bond, Ash smiles faintly, feeling envious of their camaraderie. His thoughts drift to his former team, the Janus unit, and he wonders what they might be doing now. A month passes. Inside a tavern, a hunter asks Ash why he hasn't joined a party yet. Two muscular men invite him to join theirs, but Ash declines, saying he prefers working alone. Another hunter mentions that even the elite party, Golden Knight, has invited him. Ash acknowledges that their leader is skilled, but comments that his mannerisms are irritating. Suddenly, someone mentions that a named monster has appeared on the 14th floor. Curious, Ash asks what that means, and the man explains that named monsters are rare and powerful creatures. He reveals that Dullahan, the headless horseman, has emerged and caused significant chaos. The hunter adds that named monsters are extremely dangerous, and Ash agrees that it would be too much for him to handle alone. At that moment, a pair of elegant feet steps into the tavern, instantly drawing everyone's attention. The men fall silent, captivated by the beauty of the blonde woman who has entered. All eyes follow her as she walks gracefully through the hall. Ash's companion urges him once again to join his party, but Ash refuses yet again. Suddenly, a hand covers Ash's eyes, and a female voice playfully asks who it is. Recognizing the voice instantly, Ash turns around in shock. Standing before him in a white dress and smiling warmly is Ruka. With affection in her eyes, she says she came to see him and calls him senior, just as she always has. The scene shifts to the two sitting together at an outdoor table beneath the night sky. Ash asks what she's doing there, but she looks confused by the question. Smiling, she says she came specifically for him. Leaving him stunned, he asks about the Knights, and Ruka reveals that she quit without hesitation. Shocked, Ash asks how her family allowed that. With an unusual expression, she explains that she severed ties with them entirely. Ash spits out his coffee in disbelief. Ruka calmly explains that when she announced she was going to Rosebell, her father challenged her to a duel. Yuruka explains that she confronted her father directly and defeated him completely in battle to earn her freedom. She reveals that she chose to become a hunter because she wants to stay by his side forever. Hearing such a sudden declaration, the former knight becomes utterly flustered and doesn't know how to respond. With a playful wink, she adds that there's nothing wrong with being both a hunter and a fiancé at the same time. Awkwardly, the protagonist tries to say something, but Ruka gently encourages him to keep going with a warm smile. He realizes that he could easily fall for her, yet his emotions are tangled and unclear. At that moment, memories of his former fiancé surface, along with the deep fear of being betrayed once again. Forcing a smile, the young man says it's nothing and deliberately changes the subject. Yuruka looks at him with concern, calling his name with a serious expression. She gently takes his hand and tells him that he's a pitiful person. Her tone suddenly shifts as she grows furious, blaming that ugly woman for hurting his heart. Standing up, she firmly declares that no matter what happens, she will never leave him alone. Yuruka then states that she would even bet her life on it, leaving the protagonist completely shocked by her resolve. She steps closer and says she's glad that the other woman didn't take him away completely. Wrapping her arms around him, she promises to wait as long as it takes for him to sort out his feelings. The young man spits out his drink in surprise, wondering if she had always been this bold. Feeling awkward, he suggests that they head back to the inn, and she agrees with a bright smile. As they walk, the former knight asks whether she managed to find a place to stay. He points in one direction, saying that he's going that way. The two walk together toward a large inn located on the city's main street. Ash becomes confused when he realizes that Yuruka is following him to the exact same place. To his surprise, they both stop in front of the very same room door. Without hesitation, the girl pushes him inside and quickly shuts the door behind them. The protagonist panics while Yuruka looks delighted by the situation. When he asks why she's there, She explains that she asked around at the guild, locking the door. She says this proves how serious she is about everything. She jumps into his arms and declares that from now on, they'll be together forever. Leaning closer, she whispers "Senior" softly into his ear once again. The former knight is left completely speechless and overwhelmed by her bold actions. The scene shifts to outside the inn, signaling that the night has finally passed. The next morning, Ash sits on the bed while Yuruka continues sleeping peacefully beside him. He reflects proudly on his own patience. Soon after, she wakes up, smiling as she cheerfully says good morning. Holding his hand, she tells him that he held up well during the night, but adds that it was only the beginning. With a confident expression, she says she won't rush things and knows exactly how to wait. Even so, she teasingly warns him that one day she'll make him place his hands on her, one way or another. Pulling him up, Yuruka tells him to get ready because she needs to obtain her hunter's license. Exhausted, the protagonist mutters that if this continues, he'll end up suffering from insomnia. The two head to the guild so she can register as a new hunter. Upon arriving, Ash greets the receptionist, May, with a good morning, and she responds in kind. Suddenly, the blonde appears right beside him and also greets the receptionist, startling her. Yuruka announces that she came to register for a license. May glares at her and lets out a low growl, asking them to wait a moment. The receptionist turns away while the former knight smiles awkwardly. Confused, Ash asks if something is wrong, but Yuruka hugs him with a strange look. She explains that she sensed May liked him, so she decided to give her a small warning. Angrily, May slams the license down onto the counter. Yuruka thanks her in a deliberately cynical tone. The receptionist glares back furiously and declares that she won't lose no matter what. With a victorious smile, Yuruka replies that she can do whatever she wants. The two women glare at each other, sparks practically flying, while Ash despairs over the confrontation. Trying to calm things down, Ash suggests they head to the dungeon, and Yuruka agrees immediately. At the dungeon entrance, he says that with her skill level, they can safely go deeper. The pair advances quickly and soon reaches the 10th floor of the dungeon. There, they encounter blue monkeys. Ash asks Yuruka to handle the fight on her own. The creatures roar fiercely, baring their sharp fangs as they charge toward the new hunter all at once. Remaining calm, Yuruka readies her bow with a serious expression. She fires a powerful energy arrow that streaks toward the monsters. Watching from a distance, Ash is slightly surprised by her skill. Yuruka quickly draws 3 more arrows from her quiver to continue the assault. With a determined look, she prepares her bow and releases all 3 arrows simultaneously. The attack surges forward like a blast of light, striking the blue monkey's head on. Ash praises her precision and improvement, but the situation worsens as more monsters leap down from the trees. He shouts for her to switch to close-quarters combat, and she agrees without hesitation. Putting away her bow, Yuruka draws a dagger and charges forward. Her eyes glow red as she slices cleanly through a monster's neck. The creature screams in pain as it collapses from the precise strike. She performs a backflip and finishes it off with another swift stab. Climbing onto another blue monkey, Yuruka drives her dagger downward with force, defeating it instantly. Ash watches proudly, realizing that her close combat ability is just as impressive. Once the battle ends, he waves at her with a victorious smile, smiling back. He tells her how proud he is that his junior has grown so strong. Leaving the dungeon after an intense day of training, he praises her improvement again, and she asks him to praise her even more. With a smile, Ash suggests that they challenge the 13th floor together the next day. Suddenly, one of the boys from the slime fishing comes running while shouting his name. The boy reaches him out of breath and says that a named monster has appeared inside the dungeon and that they need help. The news stuns the former knight, leaving him speechless when he learns that Dolian is there. The scene then shifts to the Hunters Guild, where everyone is clearly agitated by the report. A girl sits trembling on a chair, clutching a teddy bear tightly in her arms. The receptionist, May, explains that the girl's party encountered the monster on the 14th floor. The boy reveals that she is the only survivor and that more than 10 people failed to return. The protagonist kneels in front of her and asks if she can tell him what happened. Shaking with fear, the girl says that the monster's sword suddenly began moving on its own and attacked them. Ash asks what happened to the sword afterward, but the young woman breaks down crying, unable to answer. The protagonist says she is not in any condition to speak, and the receptionist asks what they should do. Yuruka says they must recover the bodies, and May asks whether it is for burial, but the former knight explains that it is to obtain information about the monster by examining the wounds. Meanwhile, the surviving girl is escorted away by the guards, still overwhelmed by shock. The protagonist agrees that it would be difficult to gather information from her in that state. With that, he asks whether a named monster is truly that powerful, and May grows concerned. She explains that the red monkey incident from 3 years ago required the involvement of all elite hunters. May says the association will form a recovery team, but that it will need an escort. The slime fishing boy says that if they run into the monster, the mission will be over for them. The protagonist grows thoughtful and recalls the hunter he once saved in the dungeon. He then calls the receptionist's name with a serious expression and volunteers for the mission. With determination, Ash says he will serve as the escort for the recovery team. The following day, a base is established in front of the second dungeon to begin the mission. There, the protagonist meets with the team and explains that their destination is the 14th floor. A hunter asks what they will do if they encounter the monster, and Ash answers that they will retreat, but the other hunters laugh and say they could probably defeat it. The young man tells Yuruka to wait at the inn, but she hugs him from behind and refuses, pointing at him. The girl shouts that she will not be a burden, forcing him to agree awkwardly, with a resolute expression. The protagonist tells the team that it is time to start. With that, the entire group advances together toward the dungeon entrance for the mission. On the very first floor, the group runs into skeletons, but the protagonist reacts immediately. He shouts at the skeleton soldiers, and everyone prepares for the upcoming fight. The creatures move forward with swords raised, their red eyes glowing in the darkness of the cave. Ash says the priority is recovery and that they must destroy the magic stones and keep moving forward. He then asks Yuruka to aim for the stones, and she says she will try. The former knight then releases a powerful energy arrow that wipes out the monsters. One of the hunters praises the girl's skill, and everyone is impressed by her power. Another member comments that with her around, the path to the 14th floor will be easy, but a strange noise suddenly startles everyone and causes them to stop. The team then proceeds cautiously through the dark dungeon corridors. The group continues running through the shadowy cave passages to reach their destination. When they arrive, the scene before them leaves the group in shock. Two hunters are fighting Dullahan, the headless horseman, who appeared without warning, wearing imposing armor with a blue flame burning from its neck. The creature looks overwhelmingly powerful. The monster raises its flaming sword and prepares to strike the two hunters. It delivers a heavy blow that the men try to block with their weapons, but the force is too great and sends them flying backward. The monster attacks again, with its burning blade, leaving them no time to react. With a single fiery strike, the headless horseman defeats all the remaining enemies. The protagonist is stunned, as the monster was not supposed to appear on this dungeon floor. He wonders what kind of weapon it holds and how its blade is burning with fire. He then watches as the hunters' bodies melt like candy from the intense heat. With his eyes glowing purple, the young man wonders how he could possibly fight such a monster. Suddenly, the headless horseman turns toward the group watching the scene. One of the hunters shouts that they have been spotted and orders everyone to retreat immediately. The protagonist feels slightly confused when the monster does not move toward them. The headless horseman remains standing in the same place, staring at the group from afar. The creature then drives its flaming sword into the ground and waits, as if expecting some kind of response. Ash is puzzled by the monster's behavior and cannot understand what it is trying to do. He suddenly realizes that the action resembles the etiquette of a knight's duel and is taken aback. With widened eyes, the young man wonders if the monster is waiting for him to draw his weapon. A memory surfaces showing the protagonist dueling his friend Bale in the past. The two smile as they clash, thrilled by the intensity of combat and facing each other with all their strength. Ash recalls the excitement of ending a fight with a single decisive strike and how exhilarating it felt. A sinister smile spreads across the former knight's face as he seems to enjoy the situation. With that, he draws his dagger and says he missed that feeling from his life as a knight. Yuruka shouts his name in worry and tries to stop him from doing something so reckless. She says that everyone's safety should come first, but the young man does not seem to hear her. The protagonist then apologizes with an awkward smile and rushes forward to confront the monster. With that, Ash and Ruka charge into the cave to face the powerful Dullahan. The headless horseman remains motionless with its sword embedded in the ground, waiting for its challenger. The hunters who fled comment that only knights could possibly defeat a monster like that. Yuruka then notices that her friend is smiling and looks at him with confusion. She points out that he is smiling, and the protagonist is surprised because he had not realized it himself. He touches his face and discovers that he truly is wearing an excited grin. The young man recalls that a single mistake against an opponent like that would mean the end. With a look of excitement, he wonders if he truly wants to fight this monster. The scene then shifts to the inn where they are staying for the night. Yuruka takes a relaxing bath to prepare for what awaits them the following day. Meanwhile, Ash sits on his bed, thinking about how he will face that creature. He appears deep in thought and troubled by the difficult battle ahead. The next morning, one of the hunters from the recovery team reports what happened inside the dungeon. The receptionist, May, is shocked to hear that the monster's sword was engulfed in flames. Other hunters say there is no way to defeat the creature because their weapons melt upon contact. Because of this, the receptionist suggests abandoning the recovery of the bodies for now. One of the men proposes calling in the knights, but she explains that it is not possible. The young woman then asks if there is truly nothing that can be done with only hunters. At that moment, the receptionist calls the protagonist's name with a serious expression, with light shimmering around her. She asks the former knight to accept the subjugation mission. Ash looks awkward and speechless at the sudden request. Yuruka grips his arm, worry evident on her face, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of him accepting such a dangerous task. The protagonist asks for some time to think, and the receptionist agrees with a smile, with a gentle expression. May says that of course he can take some time to decide. Back at the inn, the young woman steps out of the bath, drying her blonde hair with a towel. The former knight calls her name and prepares to talk about the mission. He says there is something he wants to discuss, and the girl sits down on the bed, listening carefully. Ruka asks what it is, and although the protagonist hesitates, he gathers his courage and admits that he wants to fight the Headless Horseman in the dungeon. He explains that it is not a mission or an obligation, but his own desire to fight. Ash turns toward her and begins to say something, but she cuts him off immediately. The young woman grabs his face and scolds him for thinking she wouldn't accompany him on the mission. She says that's exactly the problem and asks why he always treats her like this. Yuruka squeezes his face even harder and says she's hurt that he would even think she wouldn't go with him. The former knight recalls a conversation they once had back in the Empire. At the time, he said he might not return, but she answered that she would follow him regardless. With a confident smile, the girl says that no matter what happens, she will always stay by his side. The protagonist is left speechless as the young woman continues speaking with unwavering determination. She scolds him again and says there's no way he'll lose to a fake knight like that. Looking at him affectionately, she says she won't leave him alone and stares closely into his eyes. She then says she wants to talk about what they'll do after they win and rests his head on her lap. The young man suggests that they eat at an expensive restaurant using the mission reward. Yuruka replies that food sounds fine, but she has another idea for celebrating. With a slightly mischievous smile, she says she wants a reward once everything is over. The protagonist asks what kind of reward she means, and the young woman confirms it with a confident look. He agrees, and she celebrates excitedly after getting his promise. The next day, the two visit a weapon shop to prepare for the upcoming battle. The young man explains that a thick shield would be too heavy and would limit his movement during the fight. He says the only way to win is to confuse the enemy with speed and rely on hit-and-run tactics. The former knight then remembers that both armor and swords melt in the flames. The shopkeeper says that if they melt, they just need to treat them as disposable and switch to others. The protagonist is surprised, as he hadn't considered that option before coming here. Smiling, he realizes this is a good solution to his problem. The two then head to the 13th floor of the dungeon with their backpacks. Upon arriving, the young man spots the Headless Horseman standing among several skeletons. The monster is positioned exactly where it was before, as if it had been waiting for him the entire time. The protagonist's eye glows red as he focuses intensely on the battle ahead. He notices that the number of bodies on the ground has increased and becomes angry at the sight. At that moment, the former knight prepares for combat and pulls something from his backpack. He takes out several packages, readying them for his hit-and-run strategy. With his plan set, the young hunter declares that he's ready and charges forward. He shouts for Ruka to move, and the two rush together to face the Dullahan. The former knight leaps into the air for an aerial strike while his companion prepares her bow to support him. Yuruka fires a powerful blue energy arrow with all her strength, but the Headless Horseman deflects it with its sword, causing an energy explosion. Ash uses the opening to descend with a heavy blow from above. The monster reacts to the aerial attack and prepares to block it. With a loud crash, their weapons collide, triggering a blinding burst of light. The protagonist is surprised when he realizes the enemy isn't using its flames during the clash. The Headless Horseman overpowers him with brute strength and slams the young hunter to the ground. With a single strike, the creature shatters the young man's sword. Feeling the immense pressure, the former knight grits his teeth against the monster's strength. Seeing him in danger, Yuruka shouts his name and fires another arrow to assist. The arrow strikes the monster's sword and creates a brief opening, allowing the young man to recover. She asks if he's all right, and Ash pants heavily, clearly worn down by the fight. With a serious expression, he realizes the monster still isn't using its flames. He understands that the creature is enjoying the duel and isn't fighting seriously. With a faint smile, the protagonist finds the situation intriguing and grabs a new sword. He stands back up and challenges the monster, asking if they can continue. The Headless Horseman lifts its weapon, accepting the challenge. The creature then advances with its sword ready. In one swift motion, it points its blade directly at the young hunter. The former knight mirrors the stance, facing his opponent with intense focus. Surrounded by a blue aura, the young man charges forward with his magic sword. He lands a powerful punch against the horseman's helmet, making it stagger slightly, but the monster retaliates and stops the young man's blade with its bare hand. Watching closely, the protagonist notices once again that the creature still hasn't used its flaming sword. Ash retreats quickly as the monster prepares another strike. Yuruka says she'll provide support, but the former knight tells her to wait a little longer. With surprise, he realizes this enemy is no ordinary monster. Its movements and combat style are identical to those of a trained knight. Wanting to confirm his suspicion, the protagonist does something unexpected. With a formal gesture, he introduces himself as Ash, a former knight of the Empire. The creature stomps its foot in response, as if returning the greeting. The protagonist recognizes it as the salute of the Rosebell Kingdom and is stunned, smiling. He confirms that this Dullahan is, indeed, a knight from that land. The young man turns and calls Yuruka's name, leaving her confused by his actions. He tells her that he will fight one-on-one and asks her not to interfere. Facing the monster once more, Ash regrets not knowing its real name for the duel, but promises to make the world remember the strength of that noble knight. With a battle cry, he charges forward and swings his sword. The blow strikes the horseman's chest, and his bluish blade manages to create a small crack in the armor. Ash realizes the enemy is incredibly resilient and immediately begins thinking of his next move, declaring that he will keep attacking until the defense breaks. The former knight delivers another precise strike at the same spot, increasing the damage. The crack in the creature's armor continues to spread wider and wider with each successive strike. With a faint smile, the young man comments that his opponent doesn't appear to be invincible after all. The headless horseman places its hand against its chest and examines the damage done to its armor. Suddenly, it drives its sword into the ground with force, and a strange energy begins to rise around it. In the next moment, the blade ignites, bursting into an intense, deep red flame. The monster then lifts its burning sword, finally preparing to fight seriously. Yuruka gasps in shock and shouts that the enemy has begun using its powerful fire sword. With a smirk, Ash says the warm-up is over and that things are finally getting interesting. The creature charges forward with its flaming weapon, and the real battle truly begins. The protagonist blocks the fiery strike with his bluish magic sword, but the heat is overwhelming, causing his shoulder guard to catch fire as he cries out in pain. He tears off the burning piece of armor and throws it aside, muttering that it was a close call. The headless horseman prepares another attack, leaving the young man at a clear disadvantage. Even so, the former knight steadies himself and prepares to withstand the next strike with all his strength. He looks down in shock as his sword begins to melt under the extreme heat. At that moment, the headless horseman raises its flaming weapon, ready to deliver the finishing blow. Seeing this, Yuruka screams her friend's name in desperation, terrified by the situation. However, with a confident smile, the former knight reveals that he has a plan. He blocks the incoming flames with a powerful surge of energy, pushing back the attack with tremendous force. The creature pauses and watches him closely, waiting to see what he will do next. With a slight grin, the young man says that he also came fully prepared for this fight. He produces a bag and explains that it is a magical item storage tool. The protagonist tosses the bag into the air, and several swords burst out from inside it. The weapons fall and embed themselves into the ground as he asks whether the monster will burn them all, or if he will shatter its magic stone first. He picks up one of the swords from the ground and prepares to continue fighting, surrounded by weapons. The former knight challenges the Dullahan to a true duel. With that, he leaps forward wielding two swords and attacks the headless horseman from above. The strike lands squarely on the monster's chest, directly on the crack he created earlier. However, the sword cannot endure the heat and shatters upon impact. Using the momentum, Ash snatches another weapon as the monster pulls back from the attack. He rushes forward again in a swift motion, swinging his new blade. The headless horseman counters with a wide horizontal slash from its flaming sword. The fiery strike hits him directly, triggering a violent explosion that sends him flying backward. Once again, his sword breaks in half from the intense heat. Using the impact, the young hunter slides back and grabs yet another weapon. He regains his footing and prepares to continue the fight, lifting another sword from the ground. He shouts that only 4 swords remain and readies his next move. In a swift motion, he hurls the blade like a spear toward the monster, but the headless horseman easily deflects it with its flaming weapon. The former knight throws additional swords, shouting that now only 3 remain. The creature gathers its power and unleashes an even stronger wave of fire than before. With a devastating charge, the monster releases an attack that engulfs the entire area in flames. Ash is completely caught off guard by the power and cannot react in time. The fiery blast hits him head-on, raising a thick curtain of smoke and dust. Yuruka watches in despair and screams his name, terrified for his safety. To everyone's shock, the protagonist steps out of the flames completely unharmed. The young hunter stands firm, facing his opponent with a serious and determined expression. With his eyes glowing, he realizes this is his final chance to win the battle. He throws his last 2 swords into the air, preparing his ultimate attack. Wearing a red glove, the young man grips his final weapon for the decisive blow. The headless horseman charges forward, determined to end the fight once and for all. Spinning violently, the creature unleashes a massive circular fire attack with all its power. Ash leaps over the flames and launches himself into a final aerial assault. With his eyes glowing red, the protagonist shouts that this will end now. He swings with everything he has, and the 2 blades collide with a tremendous impact. The force of the blow finally causes the magic stone in the monster's chest to crack further. The former knight lands safely as his opponent retreats from the damage. The Dullahan presses its hand to its chest. Feeling the injury it has sustained, Ash realizes that he still hasn't destroyed the stone and now has only one sword left. The monster rises again. Though the flames on its blade have nearly faded, the creature then grips its sword by the blade and offers the hilt toward the young man. Completely confused, the protagonist does not understand what the monster intends. He asks if the weapon is meant for him, still unable to believe the enemy's action. The creature extends its arm further, clearly insisting that he take it. The young man accepts the offer and grips the hilt together with the headless horseman. The monster stands motionless, deliberately exposing the weak point in its chest. Holding the massive sword, Ash asks if the creature wants him to end everything here. He reflects that if his opponent were human, the previous strike would have been fatal. Closing his eyes, he wonders whether the thrill of the duel has already ended, with respect in his gaze. He bids farewell to the Black Knight, honoring its dignity and pride, with one final strike. He smashes the cracked magic stone in the monster's chest with all his strength. The creature's head lifts slightly as it receives the decisive blow. Its body then collapses to the ground. Finally defeated, exhausted, Ash exhales deeply beside the fallen monster and says quietly, "It's finally over." The scene shifts to the Hunters Guild on a starry and unusually quiet night. The receptionist, May, and the others are shocked as they ask if he truly defeated the Dullahan. The protagonist and Ruka smile victoriously while presenting the monster's items, confirming the overwhelming victory. Back at the guild, the hunters praise him, and he explains that the remaining armor pieces are stored in the bag. May despairs at the announcement and shouts for the young hunter not to do anything. Reckless, she tells him to preserve everything until the knights arrive, and the young man agrees awkwardly. The receptionist then orders them to call Bale and prepare the largest haul for the items. Ash remarks that things have suddenly become troublesome, and Ruka agrees with a gentle smile. His friend Bale soon arrives and congratulates him, saying he always knew he would succeed. The former knight is happy to see him and asks whether he only came to inspect the materials. The noble explains that named items require verification by knights from the association. The young man complains that it sounds like a nuisance, and his friend asks to see the monster's equipment. With that, the complete Dullahan armor is laid out in a large hall for examination. Bale's companion carefully inspects every part of the armor using a small magnifying glass. He confirms that it is indeed the Black Knight's armor, and the noble listens closely. Bale then lifts the sword and says that while the armor itself is valuable, the weapon is an exceptionally rare item. Suddenly, the sword ignites in his hands, and he reveals that it is a magic sword. The receptionist and the other man are completely stunned by the revelation. The protagonist then asks what a magic sword is, causing everyone to stare at him in disbelief. Bale explains that it is a magical weapon that does not require a stone to function. He adds that this is only the 5th time such an item has ever been discovered, and May calls it a historic achievement. The noble says the young man may receive a letter of commendation along with a generous reward. He then asks the two to write a detailed report about the battle with the Dullahan. His companion hands them 2 clipboards and explains that the items will be sent to a research institute. The two accept the task, and Ruka asks what this institute is. Bale explains that it is an organization dedicated to studying dungeon phenomena and magical mysteries. Once everything is settled, the knight calls the protagonist over with a serious expression, with focused eyes. He asks what the headless horseman was truly like. Ash looks back at him and says there is no doubt about its identity. He confirms that the creature was unquestionably a fully armored knight. The noble nods, saying he suspected as much, and reveals that the armor resembles that of ancient knights. He wonders whether a human could become a monster and how the institute will interpret. The protagonist, unfamiliar with the knight's name, listens as Bale asks if the enemy was strong. With a firm expression, the former knight confirms that it was extremely powerful. Ash finishes by saying that the monster was a magnificent knight of the kingdom. Looking at the armor, the receptionist, May, takes the reports and congratulates the two on their successful mission. The young man stretches and complains that it took longer than expected, noting that it is already night. Feeling exhausted, he suggests returning to the inn to rest, and Yuruka agrees, however. A group of hunters suddenly appears and invites them to a celebration. The protagonist and Yuruka feel awkward about the sudden offer, but eventually accept and head to a tavern with the others. With a lively toast, everyone celebrates the great victory over the named monster. The hunters declare that from now on, he will be known as Ash the Dullahan Hunter. With a smile, the young man thinks the new nickname sounds far better than Vanquisher. One of the men then asks whether the two have chosen a name for their party. The protagonist takes a sip of his drink and grows thoughtful. He recalls his former knight unit and the name they once chose together. A faint smile appears on his face as memories of his old comrades surface. He says they decided on a name long ago and asks if Ruka remembers it. She confirms with a bright smile, clearly excited by the idea. The other hunters look confused, having no idea what they are referring to. The two then reveal that their party's name is the Janus Squad, just like before. The scene transitions to a train station on a clear and sunny day. A red-haired girl shouts excitedly that they have finally arrived. With her hands on her hips, She comments that the train ride was not as bad as she expected, smiling enthusiastically. She reveals that this is the kingdom's first dungeon city. With determination, she tells Ash and Ruka to wait because she is coming. The girl walks cheerfully through the city, declaring that she will become a hunter and earn money. She fantasizes about drinking, gambling, and enjoying herself with all the wealth she plans to make. Upon entering the city, the red-haired girl heads straight to the Hunters Association. Inside, some men remark that the newcomer is an exceptionally beautiful woman. One of them smiles mischievously and says he would like to get closer to her. The young woman approaches the counter and tells the receptionist that she is searching for someone. She asks about a hunter named Ash, but the attendant does not recognize the name. The young woman is told that no such person is registered there, leaving her stunned since Yuruka said he was. Suddenly, she recalls her friend's mischievous smile and realizes she was deceived. With a dark chuckle in her mind, the young woman understands that it was all part of a plan. Furious, she slams her hand on the counter and shouts that the blonde tricked her just to be alone with Ash. Her eyes burn with anger as she declares that her plan to get rich will not end here. She asks where else there are associations, and the receptionist tells her that there are 2 other cities. Thoughtfully, the raid leader decides that she will begin by searching the nearest city. However, the young woman suddenly realizes a problem and turns to the attendant with a questioning look. She shows the money she has and asks whether it is enough to buy a train ticket. The receptionist tells her it is not sufficient, and the girl falls into despair over the situation. Suddenly, a voice calls her cutie, and she turns to see who spoke. It is the same group of hunters, offering to lend her some money. The leader of the group steps forward and says he can help her, but only if she gives something in return. With a sinister smile, he places his hand on the young woman's shoulder in a provoking manner, but she merely gives a faint smile before delivering a powerful punch to his face. The bully screams in pain and is sent flying, shocking his companions. With one eye glowing red, the girl charges forward to attack the next opponent. She delivers a heavy kick straight to another man's face, knocking him down before he can react. The final man left standing trembles in fear as he sees his companions defeated on the ground. The young woman faces him with her glowing eye, preparing to finish the fight. She then lands a precise kick on the last man, ending the confrontation. After the fight, all the aggressors lie sprawled on the ground, completely defeated, furious. The group leader struggles back to his feet and yells at her for her behavior. He swings his fist toward her, but the raid leader easily dodges the attack. She immediately counters with a strong kick to his stomach, leaving him unable to respond. To finish him off, the young woman spins and lands a powerful kick to his face with all her strength. The man spits blood and collapses to the ground, defeated. While she complains that she is already extremely irritated, with an angry glare, she orders them to leave and never bother her again. The receptionist, who witnessed everything, is stunned and comments that the young woman is incredible. She then suggests that the red-haired girl become a hunter, noting that she is strong and currently out of money. The girl considers the idea and realizes it is the perfect solution to her problem. With a determined expression, she says she will earn money and then go after her friends. 2 days later, Ash and Yuruka walk peacefully through the city together. Suddenly, someone calls Ash's name, and he turns to see who it is. It turns out to be Bale, who greets him and explains that he is escorting the Dullahan's items to the capital. Bale steps closer and whispers something to the protagonist in secret. He reveals that there was an inscription engraved on the armor, leaving Ash deeply shocked. The noble explains that the knight was a royal warrior who disappeared in the dungeon long ago. The young man wonders if he himself could meet the same fate if he were to die in that place. Ash comments that the armor and sword will be useful for research, and Bale agrees. Bale adds that the reward from the capital will depend on the evaluation before bidding them farewell. The protagonist then suggests that they go to the association, and the girl nods in agreement. The scene shifts to the Hunters Guild, where a loud cry of surprise echoes through the room. The receptionist, May, announces that their reward amounts to 5 million, leaving both of them stunned. They calculate the split and realize it is 2.5 million each, an enormous sum. May adds that they have been named exclusive hunters of the second dungeon city. Ash asks whether that is truly a big deal, and she explains that it comes with many special privileges. With an excited smile, the receptionist urges them to continue defeating monsters. The scene changes to the inn on a quiet, star-filled night. Ash holds a glass in his hand, reflecting on everything that happened that day. Alone in the room, he wonders how he should use all the money he has earned. Suddenly, Ruka calls him senior, and he turns to see what she wants. She hugs him from behind and asks about the reward he promised her earlier. Blushing, the young man says he has not forgotten, and the girl appears satisfied, with a mischievous smile. Yuruka sits on the bed and tells him to come closer. Awkwardly, the protagonist approaches, still hesitant about the situation. They stare at each other at close range, their hearts pounding rapidly. With a flushed face, the young man braces himself for what might happen next, but the girl surprises him. Yuruka gently pushes him onto the bed and climbs on top of him with a playful smile. She leans closer, her face red, clearly enjoying the moment. The protagonist becomes completely flustered and unable to speak at her boldness. She then shows him how to place his arm comfortably so she can lie down. With that, the girl settles beside him and hugs him, smiling warmly with a teasing expression. She says that from now on, she wants him to be her pillow. Ash asks if that is all, and she jokes by asking if he is disappointed. Yuruka says she will wait but wonders if she is being a little sneaky with him. Smiling, he replies that he is not bothered and actually likes the way she is. The young man pats her head and embraces her lovingly. He tells her that she is important to him and asks her to stay by his side forever. Blushing deeply, the girl says that of course she will stay with him and hugs him tightly. She promises to remain by his side and prove her love forever. As the stars shine in the sky, 1 week after the Dullahan subjugation, their lives as hunters continue. Together as the Janus squad, the two fight through the dungeon once more. Now, they are able to easily handle the bone warriors on the 15th floor. The protagonist begins wondering what the 16th floor might be like and what kind of danger awaits them there. The former knight then suggests that they go check out the new floor, and the two descend the stairs together. Upon reaching the 16th floor, the pair is stunned to find a massive, sunlit desert spread out before them. The area is unbelievably vast, stretching endlessly beneath a clear blue sky. The girl asks if they are really still inside the dungeon, and the young man replies that the place is extremely wide. He comments that dungeons are truly mysterious, and the two proceed forward cautiously. All of a sudden, a gigantic flying monster appears in the sky along with several smaller creatures. One of the beasts dives straight toward them. Attempting a surprise attack, the protagonist readies himself and draws his sword to face the threat with a swift slash. He strikes the creature and shouts that it's incoming. The monster lets out a cry of pain from the hit, but it does not appear to be defeated. The larger creature then launches an attack, firing its feathers at them like missiles. The young man dives to the ground to avoid the projectiles, which slam into the sand with great force. The feathers begin glowing with powerful energy, signaling an imminent explosion. A massive blast follows, sending the young man flying from the impact. Barua realizes that the creature can use magic and that its feathers explode independently. The giant monster shrieks once more, preparing to unleash another barrage of feathers. The protagonist warns that the enemy is attacking again and shouts for his companion to run. But suddenly a mysterious voice tells them they are mistaken as a new figure appears. A blue-haired woman materializes beside them and says that now is their chance to strike. With that, the newcomer rushes forward and attacks the monsters with a single sword strike, moving swiftly and precisely. She slices through the creature's wings with her blade. She then presses the attack and defeats the remaining monsters with astonishing speed. Ash and Ruka stare in disbelief at the mysterious warrior's overwhelming strength. With a confident expression, the woman calls out for the two of them to follow her to a safe location. Suddenly, another group of hunters arrives and charges into the battle together. An archer fires a green energy arrow that streaks toward the enemy. The shot lands true, taking down several of the smaller flying monsters. A white-haired woman then rushes in and cuts down another creature with her gleaming sword. A man follows up by finishing off the final monster with a precise strike from his bluish blade. The protagonist and his companion are amazed and comment on how incredible the newly arrived group is. The blue-haired woman approaches them and says it has been a long time since they last met. Ash thanks her for saving them and calls her Tanya, which clearly surprises her. Without warning, the woman kisses him on the cheek, leaving him completely stunned and unable to respond. Aruka, who witnesses the scene, is shocked and instantly filled with jealousy. Wearing a mischievous smile, Tanya says she would do anything for him without hesitation. The blonde immediately rushes over to separate them and yells for the woman to stop. Furious, she scratches her friend's face in an attempt to wipe away the kiss mark. Yuruka glares angrily at him and demands to know who the woman is and what she thinks she's doing. Smiling calmly, the blue-haired woman asks who the blonde girl might be. The scene then shifts to a tavern where the three sit together at a table. The blue-haired woman introduces herself as Tanya Sander and greets the blonde properly. Ash explains that she is the leader of the goddess's sword party and a noble who chose to become a hunter. He asks why she is here, and Tanya replies that she returned from a trip earlier that day. She adds that she heard he defeated a named monster and remarks that if he had not done so, she would have taken care of it herself. Araruka becomes irritated by the statement. While Ash says that Tanya probably could have done it, he reveals that she was one of the hunters who defeated the red monkey, leaving the blonde completely shocked. The noblewoman explains that she became a hunter to earn fame under her own name rather than relying on her family's status. The blonde then asks how a noble could possibly know him, causing the young man to grow slightly embarrassed. He explains that Tanya once tried to recruit him into her party, but he ultimately turned her down. The blue-haired woman looks at him with a playful expression and says she still hasn't given up. Ash tries to reason with her, saying that joining her party would be much safer for him. With a mischievous grin, Tanya says he can use her body however he likes. Yuruka is stunned by the statement and the young man spits out his drink, his face turning red. The noblewoman asks whether that isn't a good deal, and the protagonist shouts that that isn't the point. Feeling awkward, He stands up and says he needs to go to the restroom to escape the situation. Tanya watches him walk away with a smile, clearly amused by his embarrassment. Suddenly, the blonde slams her mug onto the table and glares at the noblewoman with fury. A dark aura surrounds her as Ruka threatens that if she touches him, she will regret it. The blue-haired woman simply laughs and comments that the girl is the jealous type, smiling. She cups the blonde's face and says she doesn't only want Ash. With a teasing smile, Tanya reveals that she also wants the young blonde for herself. Yuruka is left completely stunned and unable to speak at the noblewoman's sudden declaration. Tanya adds that everyone in her party is satisfied with her techniques. Hearing this, Tanya's companions blush and look visibly uncomfortable. The blonde remains speechless as her face turns bright red. Finally understanding the woman's intentions, Tanya states that she takes whatever she desires, which is why she never hesitates to use her weapons. Yuruka glares at her angrily, clearly disgusted by the noblewoman's attitude, with determination. She declares that she won't lose and won't give up the person she loves, smiling calmly. The blue-haired woman snaps her fingers as an idea comes to mind. Suddenly, several waitresses appear, carrying numerous mugs of alcohol to the table. Tanya then suggests settling their dispute with a drinking contest. The protagonist returns from the restroom and is shocked to see his companion asking for another mug. Yuruka drinks continuously, determined to win no matter the cost. Tanya keeps pace with her rival, drinking just as quickly without falling behind. The two glare at each other fiercely while continuing to drink without pause. The young man tells his friend to stop, but she yells at him to shut up. After some time, the blonde finally collapses onto the table, completely passed out, and Ash tells Tanya to stop with a triumphant smile. The noblewoman says that the young hunter now owes her one. The protagonist replies that waiting is pointless because he won't change his mind. Tanya laughs, seemingly unconcerned by the rejection. With a wink, she bids the young man farewell and leaves with her party. The protagonist then carries his unconscious friend on his back through the dark streets of the city. Even while passed out, the girl tells him to hold on tight because she is there with him, smiling softly. She says she won't let anyone take him and hugs him tightly. Ash lets out a sigh and continues walking through the city beneath the light of the full moon. The following day, an elderly man dressed in elegant clothing calls the two of them over to speak. He asks the young man to describe the Dullahan, causing the pair to look at him with slight confusion. The man introduces himself and shakes Ash's hand, asking how the battle with the monster went. With his eyes shining brightly, he asks whether the creature was strong, and the young man confirms that it was. The gentleman then begins firing off multiple questions about the enemy's form and power. Filled with excitement, he asks about its dominant hand, its speed, and even its scent. Yuruka feels uneasy about the man's intense behavior and wonders who he could be. Ash then asks for his name, and the old man apologizes for getting carried away. He introduces himself as Edgar Omaris, the director of a research institute. The revelation shocks the two as they realize he is a noble of extremely high rank. Edgar explains that he examined the monster's armor and found it utterly fascinating. He says he wanted to learn more details and couldn't resist coming to meet them in person. The protagonist is struck by the overwhelming presence and energy of the elderly man. After the introductions, Edgar says it is time to discuss what truly matters. With a snap of his fingers, a sudden burst of blinding light fills the room. The old man lights his cigarette using magic, fire forming at the tip of his index finger. Ash and Ruka are stunned to realize that this man is a powerful sorcerer. Edgar takes a puff and, smiling, asks them once again to explain everything, surrounded by a dark aura. He urges the young man to speak about the monster again.